Don't let me stray. Please guide my way onto the path of my deen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah, I'm calling your name. Oh, Allah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, dear viewers, to another episode of Let's Talk on your favorite station, Huda TV. I am your host, Yusuf Korma, and today we'll be talking about the very pertinent topic of how to address social injustice. What is the etiquette of addressing social injustice? And we have some very, very noble guests here in the station today. We want to introduce them, beginning with our brother Hamid from the United States of America. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah. How are you, brother Hamid?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good.
So could you please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about you? Why are you here? How long you've been here? What's your intention? And things like this.
Assalamu alaikum rahim. My name is Hamid Sharif. I'm originally from Liberia, but I was raised in the United States. I was living in Egypt for 4 years, from 2010 to 2014, and I recently came back a few months ago to continue my Quranic studies, Arabic studies, and to pursue the Azhar University, inshallah. So it's a pleasure to be on the show. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. May Allah give you tawfiq in this endeavor.
Ameen, ya Rabb.
MashaAllah. Next we have the best mu'allim, Brother Mamadou, all the way from the UK. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Pleasure to be on Let's Talk as you as the host, Yusuf. So alhamdulillah, as you said, Mamadou Tar from the UK. Been here for about a year now and currently going through the Azhar route. So I ask yourself, the panel, and the viewers to make dua for me, as it is not an easy route to start.
Inshallah. May Allah give you tawfiq in this endeavor.
Inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. Next we have our veteran of the show, Ustad Idris Tawfiq. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you, brother Idris?
Alhamdulillah, going good. Going good.
So please tell us a good word about yourself, inshallah.
From originally from the States, moved here, memorizing Quran and studying Arabic. Not through the Azhar contract, but a different route, inshallah.
Inshallah. And last but certainly not least, I have our brother here. Please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, my name is Ahmad Ramadan. I'm a teacher of English here. I'm from Egypt. I'm also working as a trainer in the human resources field, and I'm very pleased to be with you.
Alhamdulillah. It's always a pleasure to have you with us, Ahmed.
Thank you.
MashaAllah. So let's get directly into this topic. As we know, social injustice is something that's very pertinent now. If you look in the media, you see there's a lot of struggles between racism and poverty, systemic injustice, institutional racism, and lack of poverty, lack of education and so forth. So we want to begin by addressing these matters. How are we on this particular show going to qualify the term injustice? When we are using this term, what do we mean by injustice? How do we conceptualize this term? Beginning with Brother Hamid.
For me, I would simply conceptualize the term injustice as, the violation of one's right. And if we, just evaluate life, every individual, he has certain rights over other people. So a married couple, the husband, he has rights over his wife, as the wife over the husband. Parents and children, they both have rights over each other. Your neighbors have rights over you. The government and the subjects, they both have rights over each other. So once a party, violates those specific rights over the other, that's when injustice, transpires.
Interesting. I know there's a story about Thomas Jefferson and his Quran, that he had a Quran, and they were coming up with the American Constitution that he was reading his Quran. And there's one of the parts is that every human being has certain inalienable rights. So he said that he got this from an ayah in the Quran. I can't remember what particular ayah, but he was inspired by the Quran when developing the Constitution. MashaAllah. But now they are afraid of Sharia. So, Brother Mamadou, how would you conceptualize this term?
I mean, just to really echo what my brother said, Hamid, is that, injustice can be categorized as or talked about in terms of unfairness, and pushing your right over others. As Plato says, injustice is equated to selfishness. to believe, to kind of take a calculated approach to push your rights over others. And also I want to say we shouldn't kind of confuse injustice and equality. People sometimes get that really mixed up. So for example, if we all have, everyone's entitled to 5 Junaid, yeah? And you give everyone 5 Junaid, that's equality, but then that's not justice. Someone might need more than 5. So you have to make sure everyone has an equal playing field in rights, but not equality as in give everyone everything the same thing.
Okay. So there's a difference between
equality and justice.
Equality and justice.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Brother Idris?
Yeah, for me, I kind of look at it, injustice is sort of like the Arabic word, dhulm, sort of people who oppress and injustice. So, and if you look at the word dhulm, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran divides it in basically 3 different categories. Dhulm, the highest degree in Surah Luqman, he clarifies it as being what? Shirk.
Shirk.
So this is the highest form of oppression. So, highest form of injustice is to commit shirk. And that's a whole other story in the show in itself.
Sure, sure.
The second one would be is oppression of what? Yourself, the self, nafs. So, in other words, disobeying Allah, being sinful, not doing istighfar, seeking forgiveness. This is oppression of yourself. And of course, the most popular and one that everyone thinks about and forgets about, the first 2 usually, is the oppression or the injustice against people, against other things, animals and the plants. This is what most people think of when they think of injustice, and usually forget the first 2. So for me, that's what injustice really entails, really.
Alhamdulillah, it's a very interesting sort of vantage point to take on this injustice between the servant and Allah as well. Yeah, as well as injustice in yourself, within your own self. I think they're all intertwined.
Yeah, when I was looking through some of the books of the Mufassirin, so one of the biggest things they talk about is the biggest and most talked about injustice, shirk. A lot of people don't realize that, but when you go through some of the classical tafsirs, you'll find that this is talked about a lot, because it's the one thing that they can really, really, really jam you up if you don't seek istighfar from it. By the time you die, it's going to be the one thing that's going to hold you in a position to, believe me, you don't want to be. So
very interesting, inshallah. Brother Ahmed?
Yes, I believe we can categorize injustice like in several ways, like misjudgment, like for example, if we have a conversation or something like this and you are from time to time jump to conclusion without getting the full image, you are misjudgment. There is like kind of injustice because you are going to get to your decision or resolution based about what you have got. So I believe any kind of misjudgment, any kind of thinking about bad intention, I believe it's injustice. Like the way of talking, like Brother Hakim said, difference between man and woman, or man and his wife, or it would be like a kind of injustice as well. So any kind of aggressive way, any kind of bad treatment to the other people, I believe it's injustice. So we can categorize it in several ways. But the most important thing that we have to know how to fight this, how to evaluate, how, even if we cannot to fight this kind of injustice, at least we have to stop it. That's what I believe, to categorize it.
Fair enough. Okay, so we will move into our next question, which is, what are some contemporary forms of injustice that we are, as Muslims, and as non-Muslims, are dealing with? Because when the Prophet ﷺ came, he addressed the injustice not only within the Muslim community, but within all of Arabia, period. So any injustice that's present within the world, I would offer that it's our responsibilities as Muslims to address it. So what are some contemporary injustices that could be and should be addressed? Hamid?
Some particular, it's particular to Muslims in the West, though. I would like to focus on
Fair
that.
enough, yeah, that's one category.
Like Muslim sisters who wear hijab and niqab, they experience, extra scrutiny from security forces, be it at airports and, public places. They experience, just extra scrutiny due to actions of a few. So there's this misconception that all Muslims are terrorists. So now you have Muslim sisters, they go to the airport, they want to travel, and then they have to go through extra security and wait 3 extra hours or miss their flight. And then also for the male side, you have Muslims who leave the beard, trying to implement the sunnah. But even with that, you try to apply for jobs and then they request you to shave your beard while you're just trying to, practice some rituals of your religion.
Sure.
So, but because of, improper actions by few Muslims, you now jeopardize opportunities for Muslim brothers.
Okay.
So that's a form of injustice that Muslims experience.
Yeah, and that's a whole big category, the booming world category of Islamic phobia in a global world. So, you know, this is the first idea of Muslims and people see it's the idea of terrorism or the Boko Haram or ISIS or you name it, right? This is the brand that Muslims are given. It's pumped in the media, it's pumped in schools, it's pumped by government entities. So this is the brand. So even something bigger than just the beard, this is being lit on fire. This is that can't wear hijab on the beach. They would rather you be naked than cover yourselves on the beach. When a man could wear a swimsuit, but a woman can't cover herself.
Exactly.
It's, you know, completely counter, you know,
Logic.
counterintuitive. But this is on a macro level, the bigger injustice. On a micro level, you have little things. You know, it's not little anyway, but we should be able to express our religion freely. But they're all, you know, sort of intertwined.
Yeah, I have something to add here. Like, I used to work as a kind of salesperson or a sales trainer. I used to work with a lot of travel agencies in Canada, and whenever we were able to close the deal and handle everything, they were asking me about my name. Once I'm telling them about my name is Ahmed. I'm sorry, Ahmed. So where are you from? You are. I'm from Egypt. So you're Muslim, right? Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm not interested. Ma'am, just let me tell you something. You were interested and you were close to close the deal. So what happened? No, actually, I don't want to talk to you. And if you're going to call me, I'm going to call the emergency number. So I used to not avoid saying Ahmed, but saying Ahmed. Ahmed is like kind of pronunciation when it comes to Turkish language. You know, Ahmed, Mehmet, and so on. They started to accept this matter. But so tell me, like, if you were in my position, what would you do? Like, you have to close the deal because this is your main job. And if you're saying your name, and this is the best name ever because of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but you know, the whole matter is you will not be able to have even such a conversation over the phone to be able to tell her that I'm a good Muslim, I'm not bad one, and don't take or do not generalize the whole misjudgment all over the Muslims. We are not the same. So I believe it's hard even to address their concerns when it comes to misjudgment and injustice because they are generalizing seriously.
No, wallahi ta'ala is a very tough thing. And I'm not going to sit here and just, you know, come up with this cookie cutter answer. But we know وَمَا تَوْفِيقٍ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ, right? So there's no success except by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's one thing, having tawakkul ala Allah. But, you know, and there's a funny story of a brother who had a really big beard, mashallah, a really nice beard. And he had a job interview. And he asked another brother for advice. What should I do with my beard before I go into the interview? It's my only way of supporting my family. If I don't have a job, I don't have any income, any way to eat. It's something that's very real to be the provider of a household and not know how you're going to provide. So I don't want to downplay that. So the brother advised him, like, listen, man, if you can get the job, cut your beard, and then, you know, you can grow it back or, you know, you work it out later. The brother cut his beard. He ended up not getting a job. Right? So, and then he went to another job. This time, he said, man, I cut my beard. I'm not going to like do it again and not get the job. He left his beard and they hired him. And one of the reasons they hired him was his principles. So the guy asked him in the second job again, well, you know, why are you growing your beard like that? It's not suitable for this sort of work. He said, this is my religious practice. I don't mean any harm, but I'm standing firm by my principles. And if it's something that you don't like, then I would rather look for, you know, for work elsewhere. So it wasn't even about a religious thing, but just a person of principle. A person is unwavering in what they believe in, that's respectable. They may not like it, they may scrutinize you for it in the beginning, but they will come to respect you. And with a name like Ahmed, it should never be changed for the sake of worldly benefits, for the sake of worldly gain. And I think by holding on to that, and you know, even whatever hardship you have to go through, I think Allah Ta'ala will bless you because of that. And Allah Ta'ala knows best.
Yes.
So we're going to pick up where we left off.
I mean, there's so many examples of injustices Muslims face and non-Muslims face, and I feel like sometimes Muslims like to skirt the issue that, oh, it's not our problem sometimes, you know, it's not affecting us, when it is. For example, when Muslims who live in the West in particular, the main example that comes to mind is the whole Burkini example.
Yeah, right.
You know, how is it that we claim so much freedoms in the West and we live by democracy and we shout, we can do what you want, you can have any sexual orientation you want, you allow this, but a woman's choice in clothing in that she wants to cover herself for religious reasons, but she just wants to cover herself. Why is it a woman can be half naked in the street? Like, the whole world is flipped on its head. It's actually crazy, and I feel like that's another school. And even at the airport, how many times I've heard my friends with beards and who wears hats, oh, we're just stopping you for a random selection.
All right.
There's no random in it, because my friend recently traveled to Etiquette to Palestine, and he walked past the entrance to the airport, and this is in UK, and looked on his right, he saw everyone, or it could only be described as brown faces, and he thought to himself, I'm going in that room next. I'm going to be there next.
That's my line.
That's my line. And literally, as I got to the gate, oh, where are you going? Oh, just come this way, please. But the thing is, my point. We should not have to go through this. And it's people who just willingly accept it. Just they don't want a free ride. They don't want any trouble. Just accept that. I find that really, you have your rights in the West, or so you say. So you should claim those rights.
Yeah, sure. Brother Idris?
For me, I think some modern day thing is not to state the obvious, because I think, as they said, so many things that are going. This is a troubling time. This is, as the time gets closer to the Day of Judgment, this is what we're told is going to happen. So this, holding on to your deen is going to be like holding on to a hot coal. So this is known, but just to give it a sort of a different angle, not to throw it a little bit, is that I see a lot of injustice coming from Muslims also. In the sense of, not that we want to point the blame at all non-Muslims, but I see a lot of injustice in the sense of, like, also some Muslims trying to, in the effects of these things that are happening, going the opposite direction to try to find a balance that doesn't exist. They're going too far. Their reactionary statements is going against the religion to try to modernize themselves in the sense of modernizing it. This is the way they use it. So I think this is a huge thing. You have people speaking and trying to give us examples of what Islam is, and they have no idea. They don't have the training, the fortitude or the background to even speak and say what Islam is. And they're misleading people, and they're making us look like clowns who have no istiqamah. Wherever the water goes, we go. And this is what you just talked about. They don't respect you when you don't stick to your principles. If you have no istiqamah, Allah will humiliate you. You either stick to the truth and be patient. It's your only choice. There's no either, to be honest. You have to stick to the truth and be patient.
SubhanAllah, is very
So this oppression is coming from a lot of ignorant Muslims who are trying to voice out and become the voice of reason, and they're actually making things worse. So I think if you don't have the proper training or the understanding, you should just hate it in your heart. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a problem with things that are going on, because this is from our deen. You either stop it with your hand, speak about it, or hate it in your heart. If you feel like you don't know, you're not mad, you know what, just keep it to yourself and hate it in your heart. Because sometimes opening your mouth makes it a lot worse than, just hating it. If you don't know what you're going to say, you say something and you open your mouth and make things worse.
And I'm thinking about this on a macro level. Like, so here it is, that Muslims have this claim that we are the most enlightened people. We have the guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're a blessed people. And this woman once said that if it's a man's world, then men are responsible for all the things that are wrong with it. Right? So if this world, we're the leaders of the world, we're the best people to be created from mankind, for mankind, it's our responsibilities to address the things that are going on in the world then. Right? So we can be held, as a really good sort of vantage point of self-accountability. We as Muslims should hold ourselves to account for the things that are happening, even to a certain degree with the Islamic phobia, the way people are looking at Muslims, because there are some radical Muslims out there that are really, really misconstruing and, really sort of destroying the perception of Islam. And that makes us, on the counter end, be reactionaries instead of being proactive. There's some people that before 9/11, they never talked about Islam, never spoke to their neighbors about Islam, never even engaged anyone. But when the situation comes to your backyard, you're forced now, okay, let's give out some dawah pamphlets, let's talk about this, right, because it's getting kind of serious. Now you're forced to step out there and say, okay, there's a hat on that Ahmed, don't mess it up, right? You got to step out there and say it, but before it's like, Ahmed, whatever, say it however you want it, but now you have to step out or think consciously, like, okay, if I put the hat on it, I may have to eat tuna fish for the rest of this month, right? But if I put the soft hat on it, it can be a basha this month, right? I don't know. But something interesting that we should have accountability with ourselves first before projecting injustices upon other people.
That is correct. Yeah, and let me tell you something as well. Like I used to work in a lot of international communities and a lot of international schools. Like for example, let's go to one of the schools that I used to work in at. Like, okay, I'm teaching English and literature and so on, but at the very beginning I'm saying good morning and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. They answered good morning, but they didn't answer assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So why did you answer this and didn't answer that? Because mom told me that no, never ever speak Arabic since you are in an international school. So what should me answer? Would you like me to say to you, peace upon you? No, actually it's okay, but it's just only one word, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And whenever I enter the classroom, the staff room, since they would like to imitate the American copy or the American version of the American teachers. Sorry, I'm just talking about the American teachers. The whole matter is even they do not like reply back when say assalamu alaikum. If you're going to say good morning or hi, hello, how are you? But if you're going to say assalamu alaikum, maybe 1 or 2 out of 20 or 25 to answer and say and reply and say assalamu alaikum, assalamu wa barakatuh, which is really ridiculous. Okay, why do you imitate like the American copy or the American version or the West, not American only, the West with negative and positive? Just imitate the positive, not the negative. They are imitating, they don't want to say alaikum assalam. They don't want to reply. Why, guys? Do you think this is like a kind of contemporary or modern or outdated version or something? I think this is like a kind of, what do I say? I don't have like a specific word to describe them, but it's happened a lot.
What's funny, I wouldn't even say that's a characteristic of the West because Obama get on TV and be like, I just want to say salam alaikum to the Muslims. So now Muslims will say salam alaikum. They don't have a problem with it, right?
Yeah.
But
It's
we Muslims are shy.
I think it has a lot to do with them thinking the idea of what's modern and what's the way to go.
Right.
And they look at Islam as backwardness, which is a stupid way to think about anything, and totally wrong, totally false. Their way of thinking that, because they are successful now in the world and they have certain powers and certain, technologies, I want to be like them and skip aside what Islam tells you and be like a Muslim. And they don't realize that when you do that, Allah humiliates you. He'll never give you success like that through the way these non-Muslims get success.
Okay, and this leads into our next question now. So who's responsible for addressing injustice? Because now with tools such as Facebook, Instagram, social media, anybody can just jump on the internet, with his black power shirt or whatever it is he's talking about, or his gutra, his kufi, and alhamdulillah, and sort of address injustice. So is it for everybody? It should be certain leadership? Should it be people that's trained and skilled in this endeavor? Who's responsible for addressing injustice within our communities, Brother Hamid?
I feel as though primarily it is the role of leaders, people with position, influence, people with a voice. And I derive this idea from like the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, where Abu Bakr, he had wealth, he had a lot of wealth, and Bilal was experiencing injustice. He was being punished and tortured for a period of time. And Abu Bakr used his influence, that money, to save Bilal from what he was experiencing. And then you have Umar. Umar was an arch enemy of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the Muslims prior to his Islam. And he was the warrior of the Quraysh tribe. And no one would ever mess with Umar. So he would punish the Muslims when they pray. He would punish the Muslims whenever he found out someone accepted Islam. But the moment he accepted Islam, he used that power, he used his position and his strength to now help Islam. He said, I used to punish you and torture you for you praying or turning Muslim, but I vow to now, defend Islam. And when the Muslims used to hide and pray, Omar was the one who asked the Prophet ﷺ, aren't we on the truth? Aren't you the messenger of Allah? So let us go out and proclaim our Islam. Let us go out and pray in public. So I feel as though our leaders, people with a voice, people with a huge following on the social media, they should use that platform to, address these injustices that are going on.
But you just mentioned the two most qualified people, right? So,
I mean, I feel like everyone has a role to play.
Fair enough.
According to your ability, according to your knowledge.
Okay.
So it's self. You know what you're able to do, and you know what you're not able to do. So you just have to be realistic and do what you can.
Excellent. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. This is an excellent place to take a break at, inshallah. We're going to take a pause, a break, inshallah, and then we're going to return back to this crucial conversation, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How perfect my Allah is, and I praise Him. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi, Subhanallahi. How perfect you are, Allah, Subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Go ahead, Ya Shu'aib. Recite from ayah number 16 to 26.
Yeah, okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولقد خلقنا الإنسان ونعلم ما توسوس به نفسه ونحن أقرب إليه من حبل الوريد.
تلقى المتلقيان عن اليمين وعن الشمال قعيد ما يلفظ من قول إلا لديه رقيب عتيد.
جاءت سكرة الموت بالحق ذلك ما كنت منه تحيد ونفخ في الصور ذلك يوم الوعيد وجاءت كل نفس معها سائق وشهيد لقد كنت في غفلة من هذا فكشفنا عنك غطاءك فبصرك اليوم حديد.
Now that we know more about da'wah, what would you say are the characteristics of a da'i?
Sincerity.
Sincerity. Yes?
Good relation with Allah.
Good relation with Allah. Okay.
Patience.
Yes, sir?
Good manners.
Good manners. And there is much more to that. Join us in our program, the Da'wah Workshop, by your brother, Dr. Rayyan Fawzi Arab, so that we could talk more about Da'wah exclusively on Huda TV.
Subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, dear viewers, to your favorite TV show, Let's Talk, on your favorite station, Huda TV. I'm your host, Yusuf Karma, and today, along with our noble guests, we are addressing social injustices within the community and what is the etiquette of addressing these injustices. So we last left off talking about the individuals who are responsible for addressing these social injustices. Is anyone just able to get up and address social injustice or become an activist, or should there be some sort of deliberate training in order to produce effective people? So we're going to go to Brother Mamadou Tall.
Thank you again. I mean, I'll start off with the quote of Dr. Martin Luther King, who said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And I find that especially now, I've had kind of a wake-up call in the sense that I used to feel like we looked up to our imams, our our scholars in our communities for answers. But I've had a really kind of wake-up call and realised that that is not the case anymore, because the same scholars who, when a terrorist attack happens or shooting happens, will rush to speak in front of a camera. But when a black man is gunned down in the States, there's almost silence, or there's almost a wait. Similarly, when the police was shot in Dallas, everyone was current to condemn the police shooting. But the person who actually got shot, there was no protest, and I find that, you know, it's a really kind of a wake-up call for me. And also a proof for that is that everyone has a role to play to their ability, to their platform. For example, arguably, some of the big figureheads who pushed civil rights in America, Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X, they were not scholars.
No, sure not. Sure.
They were people who had, people of principle. That's what's the most important, what we're missing here. When you're a person of principle, then you're able to push things forward quite a lot. Also as well, I feel like people, Muslims in particular, feel like they don't understand, if you ignore injustice now, that's not, maybe it's not affecting directly, it's going to come to you one day, and you're going to have to wake up at that point. Sure. For example, many conversations I have with, especially students of knowledge, they will debate hours of the kind of minute details of fiqh, of the wudu, and whether you can, am I a traveller, whether I can wipe over my socks or not. You ask an issue about a woman who's got abused, a sister's been abused in the UK, silence. You ask, what's your response to, what's the Muslim response to this? What did the book say? Like, you know, they can't even move. You have to kind of, if your Islamic learning, more than your Islamic learning, if you haven't realized that Islam came to establish justice, then frankly, you wasted your time. For me, that's what Islam is. Even when we look at examples of the Prophet ﷺ's time, when it was issues of slavery, how he made it into a more just way. Everything, Prophet, women's rights, just way. Look at his final khutbah. What was that? That for me, that's my kind of manifesto, my constitution. What is that? That's justice between people. So I feel like, back to it, I've deviated from your question a bit.
No, I think
but for me, everyone has a role to play to your ability. And I feel like you can't feel like you can't do anything. You should feel like your Islam should empower you to speak out.
Sure.
You know, you should feel like you have tawakkul on Allah. You know, wherever you're in, be principled. You know, so that's my thoughts.
And I can't understand why Islamic knowledge wouldn't translate into defending someone that was gunned down unjustly, and this being something that's institutionalized, something that's normalized in the entire country, and people are afraid to address it. And I look at the Prophet ﷺ, how he stood up for Bilal ibn Rabah, how he took him from being under a rock to being on top of the Kaaba. And the people who claim to be following the Messenger of Allah ﷺ don't really address these injustices. It's something that's strange.
Does that just come back? Like, I've heard it many a times. I've heard it from da'is and scholars. It's a black issue. And that, wallahi, that really hurts me, because I feel like, first of all, you know, studies show at least 30% of those who came from Africa were Muslims. You know, African Americans have a lot of Muslim heritage. And if you ignore the black community today, when the Muslim community is starting to get attacked now, what's going to happen to you? They're going to start ignoring you as well. So we all have a role to play in this.
Yeah, Brother Idris?
Yeah, and I can only echo what he said. I mean, everyone, think about, you know, dhulm and oppression and injustice. What's the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punished people? Why? It was because of their dhulm, their injustice. I mean, in Surah Al-Hadid, where he mentions that, you know, people were not punished until he sent down what? The message to the center of the town, and they rejected it over and over again. What? Through oppression. And what does he call them in the end of the ayah? He calls them dhalimun. These people, and he punished them because of this. So, and we have many hadith that talk about, you know, what to do when you have an oppression, and we'll go to that later on if we have time. But everyone has a role. You just have to know your role. You don't have to be an alim to speak out. When you see injustice, if you see a man smashing a woman upside her head, you don't stand there and say, I don't want to get involved, you know. You don't think Allah's going to ask you about this?
Sure,
if you had the ability to stop an injustice with your hand, this is what the hadith tells you, and you ignore it, do you really think that Allah was not going to hold you accountable for that? I mean, it's just, you know, common sense. Of course, if, you know, you're not strong enough to stop it, and you know you stopping and get you killed, that's a story. But the point is, know your own role. As they say, I hate this term sometimes, how people use it, but it's in this context, you should know your role. You have to, everyone has their point to play. Either if you can't do it with your hands, say something about it, appropriate. Don't just, you know, have diarrhea of the mouth and end up making things worse. Just keep it appropriate, you know, and if you can't do that, at least you have to at least hate it, and visibly show it. You can't just hate it and be smiling. Yeah, I hate it. Then you don't really hate it. When you hate something, when the Rasulullah used to hate something, you would see it on his face. The Sahaba knew he didn't like what's going on. Sometimes he didn't say anything. You just looked at him and said, whoa, okay, something's not right. You should be at a minimum like this. Some people will see injustice in front of them, and it's just like eating a cake. Like, oh, does no effect on them whatsoever. Where's your iman? That's one of the reasons why I think the ummah is being humiliated, because they don't understand the basic concept of Islam. This is basic. This isn't even like, getting into these deep aqidah issues and, like you said, fiqh. This is side issues. This is basic. I mean, I don't even need a religion to tell me that punching a woman in the face is wrong. This is something that Allah put in your fitrah. You know it's wrong. You're going to feel it. And if you don't, something's wrong with you. Something's wrong with your aqidah and your fitrah. You need to go and really, really, really get closer to Allah to fix it. So, I mean, everyone has a role. There's no excuse for people who say, oh, no, you have some role, whether it's just frowning and really, really hating it in your heart or stopping it with your hands, or in between.
Reminds me of the story. Hamid and I were on the train coming from southern Egypt, and there was a guy in the train station that was stealing money from people, overcharging people with tickets, and he would sell like one seat to like 3 or 4 different people. So we had this crazy, sort of situation on the train. And there was a gentleman, Egyptian gentleman, who was like, you should go to the police and you should address this. And I'm like, I have no hope in the system changing. I really don't. But he said, if you don't speak out against it and if you don't stand up for change, who's going to do it? And admittedly, I didn't do it because I just didn't have any hope. And I'm thinking to myself now, on a broader level, so many people see injustices and they say, well, I just can't do it. Somebody else is going to do something about it. I don't feel like my voice is going to change anything, so they just don't do it. Right? So sometimes we can get in that sort of mentality.
I think also we have to remember that whenever we're speaking out against injustice, you're on the path of the prophets. Allah is on your side. If you remember this, the reward is with Allah. I don't care if the injustice is stomped out or not. I wish it is, and I hope that it is. But your job is not to worry about that, the results. Your job is to what? Convey, to do what you're supposed to do. And the results is up to Allah. Maybe Allah will stop it, maybe He won't. But at least I did my part.
I did my part.
If you don't do your part, I mean, I'm afraid Allah is going to hold us accountable for it. We can't. What excuse do we have? If you have the ability to at least say something and you don't, I mean, where do you stand?
That's a good point. Brother Ahmed, would like you to weigh in this conversation?
Yeah, the whole matter is I totally agree with Brother Idris, because whatever he said, I'm positive, I totally agree. But the whole matter is in some certain cases, you don't know how to manage the situation, how to handle the situation. Like, for example, there's someone shouting, help, help. She's a woman and I just wanted to help. But I found that she's weird. She would like to attract me to certain situation, and then maybe she's going to steal me because her way of looking was weird. So in some situation, you cannot. What is the best solution? What should I do? Shall I go and rescue her, or to even to push the injustice away from her? Or she is like a kind of trick, like it happened a lot, and in the ring road, you can find like there's something like a toddler seat or something like this next to the road. While you were checking it, you find like a doll. What's going on, guys? So you don't know how to handle the situation.
I just want to add a point to this: is you have to do it within reason. Allah give you your aql, you know what I mean? You have to use your aql. There are times whenever you have to pay attention to the situation and judge it accordingly. There's difference. Allah talks about the different ways of dealing with justice. And one of the ways is what? Investigation. That doesn't mean you have to go there. Pay attention, see what's going on first. You have to investigate. You can't just ignore. Because if you start on this road, it's a slippery road. If you start on this road of saying, well, I don't know, you know what's going to lead you to doing ineffectively nothing in the end. You know what? I don't know will be your answer for everything. I'd rather be on the safe side. And you know what? Use your aql. I'm not saying, be stupid and go out and do stupid things, but use your intellect. You judge the situation for what it is. But if the woman looks strange, don't immediately go there. Figure out what's going on. Stay back and watch for a minute. If you feel uncomfortable when something's not right, okay, khalas, make a judgment call. But don't use this as something to continue your path and make decisions this way. Because then you know what? Next time someone needs help and it's right, and you just, oh, you know, like the boy who cried wolf, you have that mentality of like, you know, oh, okay, and keep going, because you built that, you know, that numbness towards these oppressions, these dhulms. If you become numb to it, then you won't ever react.
Yeah. I think what Brother Ahmed mentioned is a part of human psychology. There's a book I'm reading about how the unconscious mind affects behaviors. And in almost like 90% of situations, when there was an injustice happening, if there was a group of people, no one would do anything. The more people, the less people would do anything. But if there was a situation happening and there was only you, people were more likely to react. But when there's multiple people, people say, okay, somebody's going to do something like that. There's things that are natural human behaviors, and the only way to sort of convert that is to sort of train yourself. So the next question we're going to get into is, what is the methodology of addressing injustice? Like, you know, something you said very important is investigating. So let's put this sort of platform or sort of situation on the table now. We see an injustice happening, right? What is the first thing that you're going to do? Or, and you know, A, B, and C, whatever. What sort of, you know, some sort of things that should be done in leading to addressing this injustice? What's the actual topic of today's show? What is the etiquette of addressing injustice? So we're going to say there's a random act of injustice happening before us that we are relatively capable of addressing. What is the first thing that we need to do?
The verse comes to mind. If someone comes to you with news about any given matter, clarify.
Okay.
Clarify deeply, you know, the ins and the outs of the situation. But I would like to generalize this answer of methodology of addressing, you know, injustice. I feel as though it should always be addressed with wisdom, you know, and leniency and moderation, and good preaching. Because you have Pharaoh who, you know, he committed all types of oppressions, like the brother mentioned. He committed oppression towards Allah. He committed oppression within himself and his people. He enslaved people. He killed innocent children. And he also compared himself to Allah. He said, Ana Rabbukum al-A'la, I'm your Lord, the Most High. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Musa and his brother to Pharaoh to address all these injustices he's been committing, Allah told him, when you go to him, address him in a lenient manner. So even though these injustices may seem, you know, brutal and horrific, you still have to, you know, maintain your composure, address it with wisdom, knowing when to say things, how to say it, and also in a lenient manner, and use wisdom and moderation as well. You don't want to be too aggressive and you don't want to be too passive. I was watching a show called Undisputed on Fox, and there were two hosts, an African-American guy and a white guy, and they had a third guest who was also white. And they asked him about the protest that the football player Colin Kaepernick was doing. They asked him, when you and your white friends are having lunch prior to this guy doing his protest, do you guys usually talk about injustices that black people experience in America, or is it because of his act that you started having these conversations? And he said, frankly, you know, it's after the act, after his protest, we started to have these conversations. So, you know, you can't be too aggressive when you're addressing these situations, and you can't be too passive. You can't just, you know, not talk about it at all. You have to be right there in the middle.
Fair enough. Brother Mamadou?
As Brother Idris said, you know, you have an aql. You know, you have to assess the situation and address it accordingly. It's as simple as that. You know, and you have to understand the pursuit of justice is the ways of the prophets, and being unwavering in that injustice, no matter what. The prophets, you know, they acted differently to different situations, but they were unwavering in that pursuit of justice. For example, how many times have you seen a video emerge where a Muslim woman's being abused on the bus, or a black person's being abused, and everyone's just silent? I'm thinking to myself, and you're right what you said about the group mentality, but I'm thinking like the least you can do is say something. No one's saying to get arrested or punch somebody or act violently. Sometimes there's a place for that as well, but no one's saying that. Someone's saying, "Oi, that's not okay. Can you stop that?" You know, that's what you have to do. And many a time when one person starts, everyone else has the courage to start. Okay, yes, oh yeah, that's true, man. Stop doing that. Stop doing that. But I feel like, you know, you have to act accordingly to the situation, but be brave. Where's your, you know, where's the people who have lost, we're people of Allah, people that we, you know, if we do something, and our intention is correct, Allah will help us in that. Where's those people? You think what's going to happen to you in these situations? And I find that I find this approach of, someone else can deal with it is very very heartbreaking personally.
Sure.
Very heartbreaking. Like you think of people who are principled in our history, they got there because they stood by their principles. If you see an injustice taking place, for example, you gave an injustice taking place on the public transport, anywhere you see it, assess the situation. What can you do? What can be most effective? And just go with it and have tawakkul.
I think something that I would like to throw into the mix as well is taking preventative measures to ensure that that injustice doesn't happen again. So certain times there may be certain things that I see that I'm unable to address, that I can't, within my own self, I know that I'm not able to change. Even if I talk about it, if I get upset about it, if I do whatever, I know I can't change it by myself. So in doing so, I think about creating models and systems that would allow that injustice not to go on any longer. If there are children that are poor in my neighborhood, I can't feed all of these children. So what are some ways that we can go about having means of feeding these children of, sort of every Tuesday if we provide dinners or something like this. So, at least it can take away that number as opposed to hurting my head trying to figure out how do I feed all of these kids. I can do things within my own capacity. So since Islam is a religion of prevention, sort of coming up with preventative models to even stop that injustice from happening before it happens in the future. Brother Idris?
Yeah, I would echo what he said, is that, use your aql, think about, okay, just to give an example, stopping some injustice on a bus in the West, maybe stopping injustice on other parts of the world is different. So you need to assess the situation and understand the situation before you go ahead and do it. But, use your aql, but don't just ignore it, whatever you do. Don't even, go home and have dinner and forget about what just happened. If injustice doesn't affect your heart, then I'm really worried for you. Like you said, you can't do anything. But what did you do that was key? It bothered you.
Yeah, sure.
It hurt you. If it doesn't hurt you, then something's wrong with your heart. How many people we know today where injustice happens in front of them and they're like, what are we going to eat today? Like as if nothing happened. It doesn't bother them whatsoever that maybe so-and-so just got killed in front of them. I'm from the West, and sometimes coming from the hood, people get killed, and it's like, oh, life goes on,
Yeah, and it's a desensitization of injustice as well.
Yes.
So on TV, all you see all day is crime movies, people being killed, and then in real life on the news, you see people being shot. And in reality, it's like, oh, I've seen this before. You're desensitized.
You have to, and the way to combat that is get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The closer you get to him, the more you will feel impacted by these injustices. And try to think of appropriate ways that you can react, because you can't do everything. No one expects Allah doesn't expect you to be Superman and handle every problem for every person and everything you see. This is reality. But you need to be at least somewhat concerned and at least register a feeling. Maybe you won't feel that way for a month, but you walk by, you feel bad for an hour, okay, you have some iman at least. If you walk by and you don't feel anything, you see the guy just, drop kicking his wife in the head, and you're like, wow, I wonder what she did to deserve that. What's wrong with you?
One of my friends, Tawfiq, he's a very well-known activist, Tawfiq Tutor in the United States, and he says this thing often on Facebook. He says, I don't talk about issues I'm not willing to put my resources and my time into. I won't even address it. If I'm not going to do something about it, I won't waste my time talking about it. So what about if people specialize in particular aspects of injustice? My aspect of injustice is institutionalized racism. My aspect of injustice is making sure that there's a proportionate distribution of wealth and resources. My aspect of injustice is dealing with battered and abused women, right? Some brothers in the communities, bismillah, mashallah, they got the muscles. We go and grip that brother up, man, get them straight. Whatever the case may be, if we have people that are specialized in particular aspects and they handle it appropriately versus someone who just is everywhere. I don't want to talk about this, I'm going to get on this. And you really don't really get to the source of the problem. You never really get to overturn the injustice.
I'll give a practical example that everyone, including everyone listening, can do. A minimum, besides hating it in your heart. Make sincere dua.
Definitely.
How many people see injustice and they say they're, oh, make dua, but do they actually do it? How often today people say, I'm going to make dua, and they don't really do it? It's just the thing, like, I'll make dua. They go home and they don't really make dua. I mean, really make dua for people in the ummah in certain situations. You see something? Make dua. Do this. It's a key. This is the weapon of the believer.
Yeah,
I mean, the Rasulullah, look at his seerah. How many times he used to make, when he had no other choice, but he would make dua and be crying and feeling, make dua, So.
Yeah, Brother Ahmed, we're going to close out, inshallah, with this statement.
Yeah, actually, so I believe, again, with all the brothers, I totally agree. As long as we are going to apply the Holy Quran instructions and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ approaches and ways, I believe we will be on the right track.
That's the answer, inshallah. That's the answer right there. So, inshallah, in closing, dear viewers are watching the show today, we had so much more that we wanted to discuss, but in essence, this is something that we can talk about for multiple episodes, and really it could be an entire show just talking about adjusting social injustices. But today we want to leave out, if you didn't take anything else, one, if you see an injustice, make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala against that. Cry to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ask Allah ta'ala to change the condition. As it says in the Quran, Allah Ta'ala will not change the condition of the people till they change what is within themselves. So change something within inside of yourself. If you cannot influence others and you cannot change other people, change yourself. If you yourself are doing something that's an act of injustice, begin to change yourselves. And with the change of the individual, it will change families. With the change of families, it will change communities. With the change of communities, it will change societies, inshallah ta'ala. I'm your host, Yusuf Karma. I want to thank our noble guests for participating in this discussion. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless you all and to increase you in justice and allow us all to be sort of agents of activism and agents of change. Inshallah ta'ala. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Perfect my Allah is, and I praise Him. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi. Subhanallah, how perfect you are, Allah. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi. Subhanallah. How perfect you are, Allah. Subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah, Subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah, I'm calling your name, Allah. I call you, I need you, Allahu Akbar, Allah. Your mercy is great.